This series does not excuse harmful behavior, it examines how unresolved trauma, learned survival strategies, emotional disconnect, environmental influences, and personal choices can have an impact. Men are invited to tell the truth about their pain, their choices, accountability, healing, and change. Today, my guest, Diego, I'd like to welcome you and I'd like to say thank you for being here today. Your story is a very impactful one, and the changes that you have made are just amazing. Is there anything you would like to say?
Just thank you for just having me and just be as honest as I can be and and as transparent as I am and whatever questions you have, I'm willing to answer them.
Thank you. And just know that your story is going to impact many other men that have been, and not just men, really. I think that it's going to impact families because a lot of things that we do as parents, we kind of go by what we've learned as we were little ourselves, right? And how we were raised. And so a lot of times what happens is our parents did the best they could with what they had. But as we grow up, we start mimicking those same behaviors, and sometimes without even knowing, we're actually causing harm to our children. So let's talk about who is Diego. Who is
Who am I?
Diego? Who are
Um,
you? Who are you? Let's focus first on the child. Who were you before the world began placing labels on you? Who were you as that child?
well, I was I mean, just by me doing a little research and dissecting and digesting a lot of information through self therapy, I think it allowed me to examine myself and as far as my childhood events and make some connections as far as what was lacking, missing, attachment issues that were not present in my life as from the age of 1 through 5. Uh, I want to believe I was a good kid, as any other um, kid around 1 through 5, and I think I suffer abandonment issues. My mother, in search for a better life, she left me in the care of my grandparents at the age of 18 months, and I would not see her again till I was 5 years old. Um, so I grew up with 7 aunts who, of course, they didn't parent me as they would their own children. I was just somewhat of I bounced around. I was under everybody's supervision. So there was a lot of lacking of attention, affection, you know, uh, nurturing needs that a child is required to develop in a proper manner. So I believe that from the age of 1 through 5, I suffer from abandonment issues without casting blame on nobody.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
you know, and because I know my life I turned out differently as I got a little older and made adult choices. So, but I did lack attention. There was a fear, confusion, uh, as I said, abandonment issues.
And scientifically, it's been proven that the most vulnerable stages in a child's development are during those years, right? 1 to 3, 5 years old. But we go back to, as parents, doing the best that we can with what we got, right?
Mhm.
For many parents, you're in survival mode. So you're either going to go out and work to be able to bring back what your basic needs are, right? What the child's basic needs are, so you can survive. However, and it's also the same for just working parents overall, we tend to have these long hours at work. And then when we come back home, we only have a handful of hours to be at home. So yeah, a child may feel abandoned, but it's important to also understand that it's a necessity, even though we get hurt by these actions. And as a parent, sometimes you're stuck. You don't know which way to go, especially if you're a single mom. If you're a single mom, a single dad, then the whole load is on you. So thank you for sharing that. Um, what are some of your earliest memories on feeling safe? Because I know you mentioned feeling abandoned. Many kids grow up feeling abandoned, right? But what were some of your earliest memories of you with your mom, feeling safe, feeling nourished? Can you remember some of those things?
Honestly, I have no memories of feeling safe, or unsafe. I was just, I was just a kid growing up, innocently, uh, learning as I was going. And
Mhm.
so therefore, I just never felt unsafe. Like I said, there was confusion, but as far as feeling safe, yeah, I don't think that thought ever occurred, or that feeling uh, of being loved, and as I've seen other parents raise their children, by them giving them that nurturing, the love, the hugs, the kisses, the I love yous. That
Yeah.
was lacking in my childhood, and it wasn't because um they were just, I was just being abandoned. It was, I believe, the way my mother was raised, with lack of love. My grandmother, to this day, uh, doesn't say I love you. So my mother, I think, followed that same pattern, and so there was a lot of things lacking. Truly believe she loved me, and she catered to me in her own way, but you know, um, so yeah, there wasn't
Yeah.
much going on. Uh,
Yeah. And it's important to also kind of reflect on that because um our parents learned how to parent from their parents and so forth. And that's how we learn. And many times when you think of back in that era with our grandparents, great grandparents, I've never known anyone to kind of talk about them having real emotions. And even if you look at like your grandparent pictures, great grandparent pictures, they look so stern and so firm. They didn't have any emotional regulation. They weren't taught to say, I love you. The same I would say for my own father. My parents, never said, I love you. My father, however, I think he showed it in different ways, even though he wasn't able to say it, but he showed it the best way he knew how. And I never understood that until I got much older. It's how they've learned to be parents themselves. So yeah, that is true. When you were hurt, like, let's say you were out playing, you would get hurt and, you'd come in, and was there someone to actually kind of take you in and kind of like heal your wounds or give you a hug?
um, I was a rough kid,
Oh,
so
I'm sure.
yeah, I was just I didn't grow up playing with, you know, toys. I didn't really have toys growing up. My To my recollection, I had Tonka trucks, the real metal
Hmm.
rough toys
Hmm.
that you could just slam, and there ain't nothing happening. And you
Yeah.
could even sit on them and, push yourself around. So I as far as injuries, and remembering, like, say, my mother or my father, who later on I discovered that he was not my biological father. um
Hmm.
I don't think I have a memory of them, like, putting a band-aid on my knee, or it was
Hmm.
just, I was a rough rider as a kid. I was just one of them tough little kids, and at the same time I wasn't injury prone, like some other kids. I was somewhat careful, and if I scrape myself, I think I lick my own wounds. So I can't really recall like a moment in time where somebody was hugging me or giving me that pat
That
on the
love,
back or
that affection.
like you're gonna be okay. Yes, and I just don't have that memory. It just didn't happen. Not in my childhood.
As a child, what strengths help you survive?
Um, I think in everyone in general, our DNA is different. I believe that all men and women, we're all built differently. Some are more, they, they take pain. They could take a punch. Some are just a little bit more on the softer side. I could take somebody yelling at me and I'll take it in stride as opposed to someone with tender personality, is always affected by words or, takes everything in heart. Just I was a quiet kid. I think keeping to myself. Um, I was somewhat of a loner and I was, to this day, I'm very comfortable in my own skin, being by myself. So it was like keeping myself safe by staying away.
Mm,
I wasn't an awkward kid or oddball. I was just more of an observer. And I believe as a young kid, I was a thinker. So, I played my cards, I think, to the best of my ability as a young kid, where I just watched everybody, go for the ball. And I would wait for the ball to like come out sliding, and I would be the one running with the softball at the end. So I was always yeah, somewhat just kind of like being quiet. I think being a quiet kid was a survival tactic.
mhm. I think one of the things that I've gathered from your TikTok, because Diego does have a TikTok. I will go ahead and I will leave that information um, in the description below so everybody can go ahead and follow him because he has some great content. I think one of the things that I've observed is that you also you go into deep thought. You tend to process deeply and you're observing you're observing every little kind of corner that you're in. You're observing how people move, you're observing how people are responding. It, do you feel that part of your character, that strength, because it's a strength, do you feel that was part of also your survival, that you learned it at a young age for your own protection?
So I think my characteristics that I have now, I believe I developed them in prison, being incarcerated, being an observer, paying attention. I love life because I was gone for so long, but
Mm.
now that I regain my freedom, I like to just watch people. I like being social. I sit back and I watch everybody swimming or barbecuing, picnicking, and they laughing, and I'm paying attention to that. I'm like, look at them have fun, and they're the bond. Maybe I'm watching something that I lived for so long while I was trapped inside that jail cell, prison cell, and I lived it vicariously through TV shows, reality shows, and I wanted that, So now that I'm out, I tend to pay attention to everything, to my surroundings, um, and that's just the way I function. And I think that was produced because of my incarceration.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that. So now let's transition from that young child into the teenage years. What were those years like for you? Because when I were talking about another part of your development, your child development as an adolescent, what was that like?
Well, like I said, it was stages of 1 through 5 that where I developed certain, things that weren't met. And
Mm-hmm.
from the age of 5 through 10, I was acting upon what was lacking at a young age of 1 through 5. The attention, the affection. So now I was seeking attention. Now I was seeking approval. And so I believe that, not knowing, because I was still young, from 5 to 10, um, things were manifesting. The confusion, the fear, uh, being young, and I was lacking a lot of things. I was backed up, and because I didn't get that, like I said, 1 through 5, like you said, is nurturing stage of my life. I was lacking a lot of things. And so from the age of 5 through 10, I do remember, acting up in school. I became a regular at the principal's office because I was just having little issues. And once I hit 10 to 15, I think that's when my attachment issues really kicked in. We moved from the city of Almani to the city of Bowling Park, and I was the only child up until 10. My sister was born, I got her by 10 years. So when I was 10 years old, she was just born. And so me being that the only kid, I'm moving into this new neighborhood with a bunch of kids my age who had older brothers who were gang members,
Mhm.
and they somewhat were lacking parental control. My mother and my father, they were both hardworking parents, and it gave me a little bit of freedom to step out of my home and attach myself to these characters, and started breaking the rules. One, mom would tell me, you're only allowed around the block on your bike with my little buddies, Joe Bruner, Javier, and all these youngsters. And one block would turn into 2 blocks. And before I knew it, it was 10 blocks. And I would come back, and my mother wasn't really too, involved. Um, she was a young parent as well, but she was losing parental control without knowing it. So
Yeah.
the stage of 11 through 15, teenage years, I quickly started just getting myself into trouble, stealing, going into a meat market, taking an Now Later Jolly Rancher,
Mhm.
Big Red gums, and, that adrenaline rush that I would get from taking something that wasn't mine and getting away with it. And before I knew it, it was manifesting into stealing stereo systems, the cars, the speakers, the rims, taking the whole vehicle. Before I knew it, you know, getting initiated into a gang, becoming a young gang member at the age of 13, and from stealing the rims to the vehicle, stealing the whole vehicle, then swapping that vehicle for uh, a weapon, and then using a stolen vehicle with the weapon to,
So
do
basically,
things.
what I'm hearing is that what started off as taking a little now later from the store gradually started becoming bigger and better things that you could actually take, right, to steal.
It was a
And
snowball
become,
effect.
yeah, it was a snowball effect. And joining a gang so young, the influence that came from all the OGs and the older folks, I'm sure that probably had a huge impact also. You did mention one thing that I think is important to reflect on is your mom was a young mom.
Hmm.
There are so many moms that become mothers before their brain even finishes maturing, developing. And so at that point, you're a child raising another child. And that can be hard. That can be hard to do. What role did your stepdad, when he came in, what role did he take in your childhood?
Well, I mean, like I said, mom's left me in the care of my grandparents and my aunts at 18 months old, and I will not see her again till 5, and search for a better life out here in California.
Yeah.
And she met my father throughout that period. So when they crossed me, across the border illegally, um, he was the first uh, um, man that was involved in my life. And his role, he was a pretty quiet dude up until today. He's very mellow. He's very chill. 77 years old now. But um, my dad, he is as far as his parental rights towards me, was to never lay hands on me. You know, mom's forbidden them, which I think was proper of her to do so. You know, you don't want no stepfather beating up on your children.
Yeah.
Um, so she allowed him to scold me a certain way, but for the most part, he was chill. He was a very quiet dude. He expressed his love. I have a lot of fond memories of my pops, as far as you know,
Mm.
every weekend taking me to this outside mall in the city of Almani and eating ice creams with him, you know, and it was just chill, man. And
Mm.
so that's the role he took, as opposed to my mother. She was a bit more hands-on, but being that she was young as well, she,
Mm.
I wasn't born with a manuscript for her, a blueprint,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
tried,
Exactly.
yeah, she tried her best. She did everything she could, with a little bit of knowledge that she had, and you know, I mean, I hit a certain age where, you know, I just, like I said, she lost parental control. It was out of her power, and it was too late by the time she came to find out, like, oh, my son's involved in things. And those were choices that I was making now, and there was nothing she could say or do to stop me from it. So
Yeah.
they were just young parents, but
And I have to say, even for myself as a parent, I often have to remind myself that when I had my first child, it didn't come with a manual. There was no telling me how to do certain things or how to go about certain things. I mean, I just did what I knew, right? What I had learned. And I didn't always make the best choices. It's something that I have to live with. And it's something that even to this day can really kind of tear at me. But the way that I kind of take control of it is by trying to do the best I can now, right? That I'm still here and making amends, and saying I'm sorry for the mistakes that I have made, because there is no perfect parent whatsoever. There's no such thing. So we do the best we can. And once we get older and we become more mature, um, we realize that we've made mistakes, taking accountability, acknowledging them, asking for forgiveness, and trying to start a whole new journey to repair those wrongs. Um,
mm-hmm.
so I don't want to keep you much longer. I know that we've covered quite a bit already. I would like to invite you back for a second episode where you talk to us about how this childhood impacted your incarceration and what then led to deportation, and what life is like for you now.
Yeah,
Are there
I'm willing to come back, however you want to do it.
Okay. So, what last words would you like to share with our audience?
I would like to say is that, I like, we spoke about already as far as childhood development. I think that's crucial, and stages of 1 through 5. And I believe love and kindness and hugs and kisses, the I love yous, they make a big difference in one's life growing up. When you lack it, it does definitely develop into something. It manifests into something, and sometimes that something is not a good thing. Um, I believe that, if you're a parent that's not into substance, um, that's an aware parent, um, and allow your kids to be who they are, not be too controlling. I think, there's like boundaries and fine lines, as far as raising a child properly. But we do hit a certain age where, we make good or bad choices. I believe, like I said, love conquers all. And it's the sweetest thing ever, to teach that, ingrain that into your children, that kindness, compassion, empathy is a key thing, for for a way of being. But when you don't teach somebody that side of things, um, they learn as they go, and sometimes we mislead ourselves and to thinking that what we're doing is correct. We normalize these behaviors that are not correct. And with that said, I'm not blaming my parents for uh, my choices that I made, but I do understand by dissecting my childhood events as throughout my incarceration, I was just making connections.
Yeah.
That's where the beginning
Yeah.
stages of.
And I do a lot of work with men and women to help them create change, to find a different, a better way of life. And one of the things that I always tell them is your past should never dictate your future. That because the amazing thing is that at one point, whenever we feel that we're ready, we can actually create that change. We can rewire our brain to think and to react differently. Um, and that's an amazing thing, right? We all have that capability. And I think this is one of the things that I have to say that I'm really grateful to have came across your content, because you are the prime example of what changes, what it looks like, even after so many years. So one of the things that I would like to leave the audience with is a little reflection. When you were young, what did you learn to believe? And that belief, has that influenced the rest of your adulthood, your life? And just think about that and have a conversation with yourself. It's always healthy to do some self-evaluation and understand so many things without blaming anybody else or pointing fingers. But it's about self-awareness and to understand where we are, why we're there, and understand that we can change it. I want to thank everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Until next time, we will be back with the remainder of our episodes. Thank you.